In the first season of The Wire, D'Angelo Barksdale sits with Wallace and Bodhi in the pit, teaching them chess. He explains that pawns are like soldiers. They go first and get capped quick. The king stays safe in the back. When Wallace asks, how does one become the king? D'Angelo drops the show's central truth. The kings stay the king. No matter how the game plays out, no matter how smart the pawns get, the power structure doesn't change. The people at the top stay at the top. This scene gives us the key to understand everything that happens to Stringer Bell and Jimmy McNulty over the next 3 seasons. Both men are incredibly intelligent. Both think they can win their respective games through smarts alone. Both believe they're different from everyone around them, that they can see the bigger picture and play the game better than anyone else. But by the end of season 3, both have lost. Stringer is killed by the very violence he tried to escape. McNulty has quit the detail and taken a demotion to being a beat cop, defeated by a system he can't change. The difference between them and the people who actually win isn't intelligence, it's privilege. The kind of privilege that comes with being born into the right position on the chessboard. From the beginning, Stringer and McNulty are presented as mirror images. McNulty is the smartest detective in the Baltimore Police Department. He can look at a crime scene and see connections nobody else notices. He initiates the case against the Barksdale organization almost single-handedly, following the money and the phones when police department brass just wants to grab corner boys and call it a day. Stringer is the brains behind that same organization. While Avon Barksdale is the heart, Stringer is the one thinking 3 moves ahead, trying to run the drug trade like a legitimate business. Both men are frustrated by the people around them who don't see what they see. McNulty is constantly angry at his bosses, who care more about stats and politics than actual police work. He knows he's smarter than them and he can't hide his contempt. Stringer is frustrated by Avon's old school approach to the drug game, the constant violence and territorial warfare that brings police attention and cuts into profits. He wants to evolve, to be a businessman instead of a gangster. Both men share a fatal flaw. They think intelligence is enough. They believe they are the smartest person in the room. They should win. They don't fully understand that the game is rigged from the start. Stringer Bell represents the American dream turned inside out. He's pulling himself up by his bootstraps, taking classes at the Baltimore Community College, studying economics, reading Adam Smith. He's trying to learn the rules of the legitimate business world so he can transition from being a drug dealer to a real estate developer. In his mind, the drug trade is just a business. Supply and demand, territory as market share, violence as a cost of doing business that should be minimized for efficiency. The tragedy is that Stringer is actually right about a lot of this. His instincts are good. When he tries to make peace with Proposition Joe and form a co-op, he's seeing the future of the drug trade. Cooperation instead of competition. Stability instead of chaos. When he invests in real estate, he's trying to launder money and create legitimate income streams. These are smart moves, but Stringer doesn't understand that legitimate business isn't based on the principles in his economics textbook. Clay Davis teaches him this lesson the hard way. Davis is a state senator that scams Stringer out of thousands of dollars with promises of political connections, government tenders, and zoning changes. When Stringer finally realizes that he's been played, Avon just laughs at him. Stringer really thought he could just buy his way in. Stringer has the intelligence to understand economic theory, but he doesn't have the social capital to navigate the real world of business and politics. He doesn't know which lawyers to trust, which political connections are useful, how deals really get made. In the political chessboard, he's like a pawn trying to move like a king. The same limitation shows up in how Stringer handles Omar and Brother Muzone. He thinks he's being clever, manipulating them into going after each other so that he can eliminate both threats without Avon knowing. But he's playing a violent game with violent people, and he doesn't have the street wisdom to see how this will backfire. When Omar and Brother Muzone figure out his deception, they come for him together. Stringer dies alone in one of his half-built condos, shot down in the very symbol of his attempt to go legitimate. McNulty's arc follows a similar pattern. He starts season 1 as a detective who just wants to do real police work. He sees the Barksdale organization as a worthy opponent, a puzzle he can solve if he's just allowed to do his job properly. When his bosses try to shut down the investigation for political reasons, he goes around them, leaking information to Judge Phelan to keep the case alive. This is McNulty's original sin. He thinks he can outsmart the system, that his intelligence and his righteous anger about good police work will be enough. And for a while it works. He gets his detail jail, builds his case, and eventually brings down most of the Barksdale organization. But the system punishes him for it. He gets transferred to the Marine unit, essentially exiled for being good at his job but too unwilling to play politics. McNulty has learned to keep his head down. He's working the Marine unit, staying out of trouble, trying to live a normal life, but he's miserable because he knows he's smarter than this, better than this. Then he goes on a date with Teresa D'Agostino, and she sees right through him. D'Agostino is a political consultant, someone who actually understands how power works in Baltimore. When she looks at McNulty, she doesn't see a brilliant detective. She sees a guy playing small games for meaningless stakes. She's working to elect a mayor. McNulty is chasing street-level drug dealers. In her world, what he does doesn't matter. The look she gives him, the one that makes him feel like a stupid fuck, is the look of someone with real privilege, recognizing someone who doesn't. This moment breaks something in McNulty. He realizes that even if he's the smartest detective in Baltimore, he's still just a pawn. The people with real power, the politicians, the developers, the people that D'Agostino works for, they are playing a completely different game. And McNulty isn't even on their board. D'Angelo's chess game explains why Stringer and McNulty both ultimately failed. The game isn't about how smart you are or how well you play. It's about what piece you are when the game starts. D'Angelo tells Bodie that the pawns get capped quick, and that's exactly what happens to Wallace, to D'Angelo himself eventually, and to countless other kids in the drug trade. But the deeper truth is that even the smartest pawn is still a pawn. Stringer is a pawn that learned economics and business strategy, but he's still a black man from West Baltimore with a drug dealer's money and a criminal background. When he sits down with lawyers, developers, and politicians, they see a mark, not a peer. He doesn't have the family connections, the legitimate money, the social networks, or the political capital that would actually allow him to transition into their world. His intelligence allows him to see what's possible, but his lack of privilege makes it impossible to achieve. McNulty is also a pawn, even though he's a white police officer. He has more privilege than Stringer in obvious ways. He can move through the world without fear of being shot by the police or arrested for simply existing. But within the Baltimore power structure, he's still at the bottom. He's a worker, not management. He's labor, not capital. The people who run the police department don't care about his intelligence or his case-solving abilities, except as tools to advance their own careers. When he becomes inconvenient, they sideline him. The people who actually win in the wire are kings and queens who start the game with privilege. Clay Davis is a state senator with connections and immunity. Mayor Royce has political power. The developers Stringer works with have legitimate money and social status. Tommy Carcetti, who D'Agostino is working for, is a white city councilman from a political family who can credibly run for mayor. These people can make mistakes and survive them. They have safety nets. They have second chances. When McNulty finds Stringer's body and searches his apartment, he has a moment of recognition that mirrors what D'Agostino made him feel. He sees the elegant apartment, the library of books, the copy of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. He realizes that Stringer was not just a drug dealer, he was an intelligent, cultured person trying to better himself. In that moment, McNulty sees Stringer as an equal, maybe even someone more intelligent, educated, and cultured than him. They were both smart men playing games that were rigged against them. Who the fuck was I chasing? McNulty asks Bunk. It's a profound question. He thought he was chasing a criminal, a worthy opponent in a game of cops and robbers. But Stringer was chasing the same thing McNulty was. Respect, success, a way to use his intelligence to rise above his circumstances. They were both chasing the American dream, just from different sides of the law. The tragedy is that Stringer's education and intelligence couldn't save him, and McNulty's intelligence couldn't save him either. By the end of season 3, he's so defeated that he takes a demotion just to get away from the politics and disappointment of the detail. The Wire is often praised for its intelligence and complexity, but its central message is actually quite simple. Individual intelligence and merit don't determine success in a system built on inequality. The game is rigged. The king stays the king. Stringer Bell can take economics classes and read Adam Smith, but he can't overcome the structural barriers that keep him from becoming legitimate businessmen. He doesn't have the social capital, the connections, or the racial privilege to make that transition. The system has a place for people like him, prison or death. death, and it's very hard to escape that place, no matter how smart you are. Jimmy McNulty can be the best detective in Baltimore, but he can't overcome a police department that values political convenience over actual police work. He doesn't have the political skills, the willingness to compromise, or the class background to rise to a position where he can actually change things. The system has a place for people like him too, as workers who do the job while other people take credit and make decisions. The people who succeed in The Wire aren't necessarily smarter than McNulty or Stringer. Tommy Carcetti isn't a better political strategist than McNulty is a detective. Clay Davis isn't a better businessman than Stringer, but they have privilege. The privilege of starting the game as bishops and kings instead of pawns. When they make mistakes, the system protects them. However, there is an inequality even in the punishment meted out to Stringer and McNulty. While his race and his identity as a police officer means that McNulty only has to face a demotion, punishment for Stringer comes in the form of death. By the end of season 3, both McNulty and Stringer have learned the same lesson that D'Angelo tried to teach Bodie and Wallace in season 1. The king stays the king. The power structure doesn't change just because a pawn is smart or works hard or plays the game well. The system is designed to keep people in their place. Stringer's death is the ultimate proof of this. He dies in an unfinished condo surrounded by the symbols he could never actually achieve. His intelligence, his education, his business sense, none of it was enough to overcome the structural barriers in his way. He was always going to be seen as a drug dealer, always going to be vulnerable to the violence on the street and the scams of the powerful. McNulty's demotion is a slower death, but it's the same lesson. He's still alive, but his spirit is broken. He tried to do good police work, to use his intelligence to make a difference. The system beat him, not because he wasn't smart enough, but because intelligence alone isn't enough when you're playing a rigged game. The real tragedy of The Wire is that both men could see the game clearly, but seeing the game and being able to win are two different things. Without privilege, without starting the game as a king, even the smartest pawn is just a pawn. And in Baltimore, like D'Angelo said, the king stays the king. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. If you want to watch more deep dives into The Wire and other prestige films and TV shows like this, it'd mean the world to me if you gave this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you know someone else who'd love this kind of deep dive analysis, please consider sharing it with them. It's the best way to spread the word. Most importantly, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. We're building a really cool community here, and I don't want you to miss out on what's coming next. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button. That way, YouTube will let you know the moment the next video drops, so you'll never miss a video. Before you go, I wanted to let you know that you can support this channel directly and deck out your space by visiting our online store. We've got a ton of fan art, alternative movie posters, and other goodies celebrating all your favorite films and shows. Seriously, it's a passion project. If you're a fan of one of the greatest shows ever made, you have to check out Pop 8's The Wire collection. We've got posters, we've got beautiful frame prints, phone grips, mouse pads, and more, all dedicated to The Wire. Whether it's for your office, your living room, or the perfect gift for that friend who keeps saying, "Oh, ma, come in." There's something there you'll love. The link is waiting for you in the description below. My name is Vikrant. Thank you so much for watching. I put a lot of heart into this, and your support makes it all possible. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.